Hello and welcome to Grognard Solo Gaming. I am the Grognard and today we are continuing with Curse of Strahd. So without further ado, let's return to the village of Barovia. Bildrath's Mercantile turns out to be one large room lit by oil lamps and containing several tables, all full of a wild variety of items. But though the store looks like chaos, the floor and the items are clean and in seemingly good condition. In the far end of the store there is a counter, and behind the counter sits an older man with wrinkly skin, sunken-in eyes and straggly grey hair. He wears clothes that would once have indicated his wealth, but they are so worn and dirty the man looks more like a beggar than a merchant. Friedrich, who is first through the door, can't tell if the man is frowning because the party is entering his store, or if that is just the way he always looks. The cleric starts walking towards the counter, but Seraphine gently grabs his arm and whispers, "Look at these prices. That shovel is 20 gold. The bear trap is 50. That's crazy." Friedrich nods. "That's about 10 times the norm. I wonder if he ever sells anything." Seraphine shrugs and the cleric continues towards the counter and looks at the man. From up close it becomes apparent that the old man is missing his right eye and has replaced it with an ill-fitting piece of glass or crystal. Friedrich makes an effort to look at the real eye. "Hello, I am Friedrich Dümmler, priest of Sathramelin." Yeah, sure you are. Except no one around here cares. Now buy something or leave. Coins only, no trading." Friedrich clenches his jaw and forces a smile. "Of course. Are you Bildrath?" "Yeah, Bildrath Cantemir, owner of this here fine establishment. Now what do you want?" Friedrich looks around and realizes that there are more rooms hidden by a curtain located behind the counter. Gottfried is standing by the door and Gottlieb is right behind the cleric. Meanwhile, Janosch is the last to enter and he inspects the door as he closes it. Then he and Seraphine look around in the store and Friedrich turns back to Bildrath, saying, "Actually, we are not here to buy anything, but perhaps to hire someone." The cleric pauses and looks at the store owner. "Are you daft? This is a store, and I'm certainly not for hire. Not by the likes of you, anyway. If you are not going to buy nothing, then just get out of here already." The old man waves his hand dismissively towards the door. "Wait, hear me out. You have a nephew, don't you?" "Periwimple." "Sure, but he works for me, is not for hire." "Are you sure? Don't you at least want to hear my offer?" Bildrath strokes his chin with his hand, revealing dirty 2-inch nails on all his fingers. He looks at Janosch, who is inspecting a sizable iron pot. Then he looks at Seraphine, who is inspecting a flask of oil, and his frown disappears. "Fine, make it quick. What is your offer?" "Well, the cost of a skilled worker is generally 2 gold per day, right?" The store owner's nostrils flare up and his eyes widen as he takes a deep breath, but before he can object, Friedrich continues. "However, keeping in line with your prices, we could pay 20 gold per day. And since you are Periwimple's employer, it would only be fair that we pay you, right?" Bildrath's eyes light up and he grins, showing his uneven yellow teeth. "Now you're speaking my language, but he is my nephew, so 40 gold pieces per day." 30. 35. Deal. The cleric stretches out his hand, glad he's wearing gloves as the old man shakes it. "Periwimple, come here, lad." Curious, Janosch and Seraphine move over to the counter, and a few seconds later an enormous man comes out from behind the curtain. An inch or two taller than the paladins, and with even broader shoulders, the man has small eyes that are located quite close together, a shaved head except for a long black ponytail growing from the back of his head, and a very thick black mustache. "What is it, uncle?" "Periwimple, my lad. Please meet our new friends. This is, Bildrath points to Friedrich, who introduces himself and the other members of the party. "You will be working with them in the future."
"Okay, uncle, whatever you say. Nice to meet you all."
"Excellent. What do you say we treat you to drinks this evening to celebrate the partnership?" The old man looks at Seraphine. "Will you all be there?" "We have work at the church, but you can count on me to be there to pick up the tab. Whatever you want to drink, and as much of it as you like. Sounds good?" Periwimple looks at his uncle while failing to hide his excitement. Yes, that sounds very good. We'll see you tonight then." Everyone says goodbye and the party leaves the store. Once they are in the street outside, Janosch turns to Friedrich. "That's going to be some tab, father. Periwinkle looks like he could drink a whole cask by himself." "It won't be a problem in the long run." The cleric gives the witch hunter an enigmatic look. "If you say so, father. What about Bildrath?" "An absolutely disgusting man, lecherous and miserly, and showing no respect for us, the church, or our god. One of the worst kinds of heretics. But we need him to recruit Periwinkle." Janosch nods but doesn't say anything, seemingly lost in thought. Suddenly a distant mournful wailing reaches the party, and everyone looks up and down the street outside Bildrath's mercantile. But the area is empty, and as the wailing ends, the village becomes silent once more. "Is that the same woman as earlier?" "Could be. I guess there is a lot to lament when you live in this god-forsaken hellhole." "Look, father." Janosch points to the west, where a single figure has come around the corner at the end of the street. Since it is the first living soul they have seen outside, the party simply stares at the newcomer. Though it is hard to tell with the overcast grey sky, it is probably a little past midday, and the mist in the village is so thin it no longer obscures anyone's vision, even though it still adds an unpleasant damp chill to the air. So it's plain to see that the figure is an old woman pushing a wooden cart. She pushes the cart past the first house before she becomes aware of the party. Then she stops suddenly and looks back at them. Then, after a few seconds, the old woman starts dragging her cart back the way she came from. Friedrich turns to Janosch. "That old crone is very obviously up to something she doesn't want us to know about. Find out what it is." "Certainly, father." The witch hunter quickly moves southwest and disappears between the houses. "Let's move away so when she comes back she thinks it's safe to do whatever she was here to do." The cleric leads Seraphine and the paladins down the street to the south, and after almost 100 feet they find themselves in front of a boarded-up 2-story building that is the apparent source of the wailing they heard previously, as they can hear crying from inside. Seraphine stops and looks at the building. "I didn't think anyone lived in the boarded-up houses. Should we check to see what's going on?" Friedrich shakes his head. "She is crying. She isn't calling for help. Let's just wait for Janosch to return." The witch hunter reaches the edge of town and peeks around the corner of the last house. He can see the old woman muttering to herself and stomping her foot. From this distance it becomes clear that the old woman is hideously ugly and dressed in filthy clothes. It's also discernible that her cart is full of pies. Janosch wonders how anyone in their right mind could eat a pie sold by such a disgusting person, but he reminds himself that this is Barovia, and that there are so many things wrong with the place that he probably hasn't seen the worst of it yet. The old woman, who seems to be a pie peddler, or to be masquerading as one, looks around the corner where she's standing. Then she takes her cart and moves back into the street where the party first spotted her. Janosch follows her, keeping enough of a distance to remain unseen. The old woman stops by the first house that isn't boarded up and knocks on the door. When no one answers, she repeats the process with the second house. Once she finally makes a sale, she receives a single coin that she breathes on, rubs against her dirty dress, and inspects before she puts it in her purse. Janosch is too far away to really tell, but he could swear it was a gold piece. And it makes him wonder what's going on, as Bildrath had prices that were around 10 times the norm, and the deceased burgomaster had written about much wealth. Are the Barovians somehow rich while living in such squalor? How does a villager in a rotting house get his hands on a gold coin? Janosch can't really make sense of it and focuses on the old woman again. She has reached another house, and this time she goes inside after speaking to the resident. The witch hunter quickly runs across the street and sneaks up to a broken window that has been poorly boarded up. Inside he can see a man and a woman, both pale and sickly looking, with gaunt faces and dead eyes. Between them stands a boy who might be around 7 years old. He is trying to hide behind the adults, who are probably his parents, but they won't let him. The old woman grabs the boy by the arm and pulls out a long needle from somewhere in her dress. The boy pleads with the old woman, but she simply chuckles to herself. Then the boy looks at the adults. "Mommy, Daddy, please, I don't like this." Then he breaks down and starts crying. The pie peddler says, "Good, good," and starts weaving a spell. When she finishes, the boy falls unconscious and she catches him. The gaunt-faced woman looks down at the boy and sheds a single tear. Then she kneels down and helps the old lady push the child into a big burlap sack that Janosch did not see where it came from. The witch hunter quickly moves away from the broken window and around the corner as the old woman, with surprising strength, throws the sack onto her shoulder and heads for the door. Janosch watches her place the sack in a compartment under the pies in her cart before handing the sick-looking residents 2 pies. Then, as the pie peddler moves to the next house, the witch hunter sneaks away to look for the rest of the party. Seraphine's eyes are wide and her face pale as Janosch finishes telling the others what he has just seen, and even Friedrich looks disturbed. What do you think it is? Because I doubt it's an actual old woman with that kind of strength.
It's hard to say. Onis eat babies and they shape change, but it's standard behavior for plenty of demons. She'll reach the village square any moment now. Go look, Gottlieb.
Of course, Sergeant.
The paladin does as instructed and returns, saying,
It's a fiend.
Well, Onis are giants, so it's either from hell or the abyss.
Let's interrogate it and put it out of its misery. The party intercepts the pie-peddling old woman by moving between the houses and appearing just a few feet away from her when they round the corner, so she doesn't get the opportunity to escape. When she realizes she has been cornered, she offers a ghastly smile, and with a nervous chuckle she shrinks down and bows theatrically.
"Me lords, me lady, what can an old woman do for thee this fine afternoon?"
"Drop the act. We know you are not what you appear to be."
"Oh no, me lord, you have me mistaken for someone else. I'm but a humble pie vendor, see?"
She points to her cart that still has several pies on it. "Reveal your true nature, fiend, or we will do it for you." Friedrich raises his mace and points it at the face of the creature he now knows is not an old woman. The reluctance is apparent on the creature's face, but it slowly starts to morph into a larger form with orange and black skin, dagger-like claws, and eyes so baleful they almost seem to glow. Friedrich and Janosch keep their composure, but the shock is visible on Seraphine's face.
"So, night hag, what is your name?"
"I am Morgantha, and who might you be?"
"We are soldiers of the one god Sathramelin. That is all you need to know about us. But you should also know that our god will reveal any lies you tell, so do not try to resist my magic, fiend." Friedrich prays for a few seconds, and then he looks back at the night hag. "What is your relationship to Strahd von Zarovich?"
"I live on his land. I know his name, but I doubt he knows mine."
"Where do you live exactly?"
"An old windmill, a few hours from this village. It's old and run down, like everything in this land. I doubt you'd find it interesting."
"What more can you tell us about Strahd?"
"Oh, he has mastery over this land, this domain, and it is full of his spies, wolves and bats, and those accursed Vistani."
Morgantha spits on the ground. "Why do you hate the Vistani?"
"They are under Strahd's protection for some old debt of gratitude he owes them, so I cannot do anything to them."
"Where do these Vistani spies live? Where would we find them?"
"Oh, they are a nomadic people, but there is a camp to the west of the shores of the Tser pools, and another camp on the outskirts of a town called Valaki. Are you enemies of the Vistani?"
The night hag looks at Friedrich with her unsettling orange eyes, but she doesn't wait for a reply.
"Yes, you even intend to fight Strahd, don't you?"
"I will ask the questions, fiend."
"Of course, me lord, of course. I mean no harm to you. But if you do intend to fight Strahd, that is, then I have some truly valuable information. But you have to promise me you'll let me go if I tell you."
"How about you just tell us, and if the information is valuable as you claim, we'll see."
Fine. Beggars can't be choosers, I suppose."
Despite her already extremely crooked back, the night hag somehow manages to shrink down even further.
"Strahd has undead enemies in Barovia. There is a ruined mansion west of Vallaki that is home to the Order of the Silver Dragon. Do not ask me about the specific politics behind it all, but they do hate that vampire, that is for sure. Do we look like people who would ally with the undead? To win a war? Who am I to say? But there's more. Listen, Strahd's best kept secret is something else, you see. Something only I know of. And I can tell you, here, just listen. There is a temple full of forbidden lore, hidden in the mountains to the south. You just follow the Tsolenka Pass. Who knows? The temple might reveal exactly what you need to defeat him, right? And in the scope of things, I'm a nobody. Compared to Strahd, I'm no one, and you know I'm not lying.
Janosch takes a step forward towards the night hag.
What was the purpose of the needle, and why did you put it away when the boy started crying?
Morgantha hesitates.
Haven't I answered enough questions? You can have the boy, no problem.
She gestures to the cart with a clawed hand.
I can even promise I will never hurt him as long as I live.
Answer the questions, fiend.
Okay. It's to test the quality of the child.
How? Why? Explain. Despite her hideous appearance, the reluctance is still apparent on the night hag's face.
They need to cry or laugh. That's how I know if they'll function for my purposes.
What kind of child doesn't laugh or cry? Stop avoiding the real answer.
Fine. Perhaps you have noticed how some Barovians are stunted. Well, those people don't really have souls, and they cannot laugh or cry. There, I said it. Now you know. Now let me go. Please.
Not so fast. You have avoided your purpose. What do you do with the children? Frustration flashes across Morgantha's face.
Come on, you already know it's terrible by human standards. And if I tell you, you'll want to kill me. So I won't tell you. But before your truth spell runs out, I'll tell you this, so you know it is true. I do not want to die in Barovia. And you can trust me when I say neither do you.
The night hag pauses, seemingly to choose her words.
And that's why I'd rather not fight. Not because I don't think I have a chance against you, but because I don't want to gamble with the most precious thing I have. And hopefully you don't want to take that gamble either.
The night hag straightens her back with a loud and unhealthy-sounding cracking noise from her bones and joints. Afterwards, she is taller than everyone in the party except the paladins, who are about the same height as her.
If you're so keen on not risking your life, why haven't you tried to use your heart stone to turn ethereal and escape?
For a second, the hag looks surprised.
I'm not going to ask how you know about those, but I lost it, or indeed I wouldn't be here any longer.
You have only spoken the truth this far, but you didn't lose the stone. Why lie about that?
I am done answering questions, mortal. With the amount of secrets I have revealed to you, the only fair thing would be to let me go, and I think you know that. So, how about we fight the next time you catch me getting paid with a child, and maybe none of us will die a useless and regrettable death in this place.
The night hag falls silent and subtly changes her stance to prepare for a fight. The tension builds for a few seconds as Friedrich makes a decision. Then he yells, "Heretic," and pushes his shield towards the night hag in an attempt to provoke her and draw her attack. The maneuver is successful and Morgantha lashes out with her claws against the cleric. She is as fast as a snake, her claws are nasty and her strength intimidating. But once it becomes clear she is only going to swing her claws at Friedrich, the party understands why she was so desperate to trade her secrets for her life. The bravado the night hag showed as the fight became inevitable was just another attempt to try to avoid the fight. And though the fiend is unnaturally tough to wound, the fight lasts less than half a minute before the glaive attacks, magic missiles, and silvered short sword stabs overcome Morgantha's strength, forcing her down on one knee. Her face contorts with rage.
"Curse you mortals, curse you!"
Dark purple blood sputters from her mouth as Janosch's silvered weapon punctures the night hag's left lung. She makes one final attempt to slash Friedrich with her claws, but as her eyes roll back and her jaw goes slack, her arms go limp, and she falls face first in the mud without having even scratched the cleric. Gottlieb impales the body with his glaive, piercing the fiend's heart if it is located in the same place as a human's, and if indeed hags have hearts at all. Seraphine rushes over to the cart and gently pulls out the sack containing the child. When she opens it, she finds the boy is asleep but seemingly healthy. The sorceress pats him on the cheek, but he doesn't respond. The Aasimar looks up at the rest of the party. A sleep spell only lasts a minute. I'm not sure what this is.
I think he just fainted from the shock, and having been used as currency by his own parents, I don't really fault him for it.
No, of course not. He looks, I don't know, not even 10 years old. But what do we do with him? We can't bring him back to his parents. No, we'll bring him to the church. Donovich would know if there is an orphanage in this village. If not, I guess he's getting a new altar boy. Gottlieb, destroy the pies. Gottfried, place the body on the cart and bring it. Janosch, search the body. Everyone does as instructed, and Janosch finds a purse containing 43 Barovian gold coins, a pouch probably made of human skin, and a glass jar containing some kind of entrails. Seraphine hands the child over to Gottlieb, who carries him as the group starts heading for the church, and meanwhile his brother pushes the cart with the dead night hag on it. Seraphine walks next to Friedrich and says, I feel like I'm going to have to take notes when we get to the church to remember everything that hag said. I feel like there are too many strange things going on in this land. I know what you mean. It sort of boggles your mind when you try to think about it. Yes, it's like a puzzle where none of the pieces fit together and yet they look like they could form an image. Janosch walks up to Seraphine and Friedrich.
Look.
The witch hunter holds up the pouch made from human skin.
This is called a soul bag. Night hags use it to trap the souls of their victims after death.
Seraphine makes a face. Disgusting. Friedrich shrugs. I'm not really surprised. Just burn it with the body.
Yes, of course, father. But don't you remember, in Durst Manor?
The cleric stops. Yes, you found a pouch made of human skin in one of the cultists' sleeping rooms. Huh, interesting.
Yes, and not only that, but we found this.
Janosch searches in his pack for a few seconds and then brings out a piece of paper.
It's the deed to a windmill.
And the night hag said she lived in a windmill. But we don't know how many of those there are around here. It might not be the same one. But a very good catch, Janosch. It might be relevant.
Normally night hags capture evil souls in the mortal realm and trade them with devils in hell. And as far as I know, they are able to shift between planes quite easily. But it seems Morgantha couldn't do that either.
No, or she would have escaped us easily. I wonder if it has to do with this place, or if it was a personal shortcoming of the hag. The trio starts walking again, and they hurry their steps to catch up with the paladins. The church is exactly the same sad old building as earlier in the day, with the one difference that there is now a large pile of debris outside of it. Friedrich inspects the pile and nods to himself. Gottlieb, take the child inside. Gottfried, dismember and burn the night hag's body.
Yes, father.
The paladins do as they have been instructed, and the rest of the group follow Gottlieb into the church. Inside, Donovich has cleared the debris in the chapel and is working on one of the messy bedrooms. He bows deeply to his new master and continues working. When asked, the old priest informs Friedrich that there is no orphanage in the village, and when told the still unconscious boy is going to be his new altar boy, Donovich simply nods and offers the newly cleaned bedroom to the boy. Seraphine looks after the child, and once he awakens he introduces himself as Lucian Yarov and lets everyone present know he is 7 years old. Then he wonders about the strange burning smell, and before anyone can say anything, Seraphine says they are burning some of the debris Donovich has collected outside. Though Lucian is clearly heartbroken by his parents' betrayal, he still seems thankful to be put to work helping the old priest clean the church. By the time the workday is over, Donovich and Lucian have cleared out all of the debris from the church, and they have swept every inch of the floor. Friedrich commends their work before telling Janosch it is time to go meet Bildrath and Periwimple. Seraphine asks if she shouldn't join them to perhaps make the old store owner more talkative, but even though Friedrich appreciates her willingness to help, he dislikes the idea of the sorceress enduring Bildrath's company. Thus, the cleric and the witch hunter head for the Blood on the Vine tavern, while the paladins are left in the church with orders to keep Seraphine safe. Once the cleric and the witch hunter are some 30 feet from the church, Friedrich says, "So, what do you think of this Asimai?" Janosch chuckles.
"Far from the worst one we've picked up."
"Yes, remember that tiny fellow?"
"He's hard to forget. For such a small man, he sure managed to have a big chip on his shoulder."
"Yes, we certainly couldn't reach the cathedral fast enough that time."
"True. Sometimes our Lord moves in mysterious ways, that's for sure. But it seems we're stuck with Seraphine for some time, though I have to say she has adapted surprisingly well."
"Yes, I agree. As long as her bleeding heart doesn't get in the way, she has the potential to become a real asset, but
But what?
But, oh, look, our new business partners are already here." Outside the tavern, in the faint light of a single lantern, 2 dark shadows can be seen in the fog. If not for their size difference and the giant build of Periwimple, it would have been impossible to tell who they were, even from as close as a dozen feet. Friedrich calls out, and Bildrath answers with a voice only marginally more friendly than earlier in the day. The inside of the Blood on the Vine looks like before, with the exception of Ismark no longer being there. The 4 men sit down, and though the conversation starts out frigid and uninformative, the store owner and his nephew make a noticeable change in their demeanor when they realize that Friedrich is indeed letting them drink as much as they want to. And between that moment and the time that the Barovian men become incoherent from their drinking, Friedrich and Janosch learn a few things. Periwimple used to have a brother with whom he trained with all kinds of weapons. But the brother, who is never mentioned by name, was recruited by a wizard in black robes to go fight the devil Strahd, and he never came back. Also, Bildrath reveals that he restocks his store by trading with the Vistani. It also becomes apparent the old man has a strong dislike of religion, though he never explains why. Beyond that, the soldiers of Sathramelin learn nothing of interest, but instead endure the old man's complaints about the outsiders that visit his store and that are too cheap to do anything but whine about the prices. Except when the customers are female elves, then the old man uses very different words, and Friedrich steers the topic back to greedy halflings and their grubby little hands in order to make the conversation bearable. After several hours, despite having sold a constant stream of wine, one of the Vistani owners signals the pudgy barkeep, who then announces to the 4 guests that it's closing time. Bildrath is so drunk Periwimple has to carry him home, and though his feet are far from steady, he manages the task quite well after thanking Friedrich and Janosch maybe 7 times for a fantastic evening. Both soldiers pat the giant man on the back and tell him they are friends now, and that if he ever needs anything, he is welcome to find them at the church. Having watched the enormous form of Periwimple disappear in the darkness and the mist, the cleric gives the witch hunter a few whispered instructions before the 2 of them return to the church.
"Welcome back, master."
Friedrich nearly strikes Donovich with his mace again, as the old man is standing in the darkness right on the other side of the door. "Ah, Donovich, don't do that. Carry a candle or something."
"Yes, master, but the others are sleeping."
"So, what are you doing up?"
"There is something you must see. Come, master."
Donovich points to the chapel and starts walking in that direction. Friedrich and Janosch follow the former priest, and when they reach the chapel they receive a quiet greeting from Gottfried, who is keeping watch in the light of a single candle. Donovich walks up to one of the windows facing the graveyard and looks outside. The cleric and the witch hunter follow suit, but they fail to see anything through the thick glass. Even the ever-present mist has been swallowed by the darkness of the Barovian night outside. Friedrich turns to Donovich to point out that there is nothing to see, but the old man is so transfixed the cleric changes his mind and turns back to the window. A few seconds later, a faint greenish light appears outside, somewhere near the middle of the graveyard. It's impossible to tell what it is, but it seems to be emerging from the ground. At first it looks like a sphere, then it becomes evident it is the head of a glowing thing, vaguely the size and shape of a human adult, even though the form is distorted by the mist and looks mostly like a luminous egg. Janosch and Friedrich both draw the conclusion they are looking at some kind of spirit, like a ghost or a will-o-wisp. and their conclusions are soon confirmed as another glowing form emerges from the ground, and then another and another. Soon the whole graveyard is aglow with luminous figures, and some of them are so close to the church it is clear to see they are the spirits of dead humans. Dressed like the riffraff that was all too common in parts of Lutz, these have to be people who, in life, would no doubt have called themselves adventurers. The Church of Sathramelin would sometimes hire such people as scouts and mercenaries, but Friedrich had nothing but disdain for them. After 3 minutes or so, the cleric and the witch hunter estimate that around 100 spirits have gathered in the graveyard, and it seems there are no more emerging from the ground. Most of them are seemingly human, but some seem to be dwarves and even halflings or gnomes. Among those that are close enough to make out details, there are apparent knights, barbarians, wizards, and clerics. Then, in groups of varying sizes, they fall into line and all start marching to the southwest, walking straight through the mausoleums and tombstones that get in their way. Friedrich turns to Donovich. Who are, or were they?
The souls of those who once defied the Dark One.
What are they doing?
They are going to Castle Ravenloft. Some say to fight the Devil Strahd. Some say to do his bidding. That in defeat and death they have fallen under his spell.
Has anyone tried to communicate with them?
Yes, outsiders. Ironically, some of them are now among those very dead, and they too refuse to speak to the living.
Most peculiar.
Yes, Father. For such a small village, there certainly are a lot of oddities in this place.
Well done, Donovich. Alerting us to this was the right thing to do. Now go to bed.
Yes, Master.
The old man bows and walks off towards his room with a shuffling gait. Friedrich and Janosch join Gottfried and the others, and the cleric takes over guard duty. The party leader ponders the strange place he finds himself in as he waits for the paladin to fall asleep. It certainly seems like Barovia is a prison for everyone except the Vistani. But what about Strahd himself? He can allow his servants passage, but can he leave himself? And if so, what is he doing in this absolutely miserable place? Is he hiding, looking for something or someone, or waiting for something? And where exactly is Barovia? It most definitely isn't part of Agremeni. Gottfried snores lightly, bringing the cleric out of his thoughts. He leans quietly to be able to reach Janosch, but before he is able to poke the witch hunter, he sits up. The two men exchange a look, and then without saying a word, they both nod. Then, soundlessly, Janosch leaves the chapel and exits the church. Outside, the night is dark and the mist cold. Janosch arranges his weapons and his gear, and then he takes off to the east. Despite the darkness, he easily finds his way to where he beheaded and buried Dolio. Ignoring the shallow grave, the witch hunter moves over to a hollow tree and takes out a small blood-soaked sack. Having made sure no one is around, Janosch heads south into the village. Scurrying like a silent shadow between the alleys, the witch hunter cannot help but to feel at home. Remaining unseen has always been an important part of his skill set, but one that sees little use when he is part of a military group. And even if he doubts he is truly alone in the Barovian night, Janosch still feels confident that he is safely hidden, even from things that see in the dark. Reaching the village square, the witch hunter looks and listens before he moves across and crouches down by the entrance to Bildrath's mercantile. Having already seen the lock, Janosch unlocks it easily with his lockpicks. Then he slips inside. The store is quiet, still and dark. Since the previous visit, the witch hunter knows where not to step to avoid making the floor creak. He glides through the large room, picking up a 2-gallon cooking pot on his way to the counter and the back of the store. Even if Janosch has not been to the part of the building that is behind the curtain, it is easy to locate Bildrath's bedroom from his snoring. That is, while Periwimple is breathing out, as the big man snores even worse from an adjacent room. The witch hunter closes the door behind himself as he enters the store owner's bedroom. The old man is lying on his stomach, and Janosch wastes no time but draws his short sword and uses the pommel of his weapon to strike the sleeping man in the back of the head.
"Suffer not the heretic to live,"
Janosch whispers. Then he puts the pot on the floor next to the bed, sheaths his sword and takes out the bloody sack. Reaching inside, he pulls out the severed head of Donovich's son, Doru, the vampire spawn. The youth's face looks like a grotesque black and white mask in the faint moonlight coming in through the window, but Janosch barely notices. He's focused on moving things along before the old man's heart stops beating. The witch hunter pulls Bildrath's arm out over the pot and then opens the mouth of the cut-off head and places it over the unconscious man's wrist. Then he presses the jaw upwards with all his strength while holding the head down, making the severed head bite into the old man's flesh. Bildrath remains motionless as his blood starts to flow and drip into the pot on the floor. Janosch makes sure the bite wound is deep before he removes the severed head. Then he simply waits as Bildrath bleeds out, and as the old man's heart is about to give up, the witch hunter brings out the severed head again and uses it to place a bite on Bildrath's neck. It's too dark to see how much blood is in the pot, but Janosch assumes it's enough to make it appear as if the corpse was the result of a bloodsucker attack. He quickly arranges the dead body as if there has been a bit of a struggle and smears some blood on the bedpost in case the initial pommel strike needs an explanation. Then the witch hunter takes the pot and the severed head and quietly slips back out of the room, through the store and out onto the village square. Staying low and in the deepest moonlight shadows, Janosch disposes of the blood and hides the severed head and the iron pot in the hollow tree near Doru's grave. Friedrich doesn't realize that Janosch is back inside the church until the witch hunter steps into the light of the single candle in the chapel. Neither one of the two men speaks. Instead, Janosch simply nods, and then the cleric does the same. Then Friedrich lies down to sleep, and the witch hunter sits down to take over guard duty. The next morning, Friedrich is guiding the party, Donavich and Lucian, through their morning prayers. O Sathramelin, you are the light of truth, the ever-burning sun of purity, and the wielder of the flaming sword of divine retribution. Hear our prayers, O perfect one. Everyone is kneeling in front of the cleric, keeping their heads down and their eyes closed. Everyone except Seraphine, who is instead sitting with her legs crossed. Friedrich remains standing, but bows his head and closes his eyes. The cleric begins to mentally chant the holy names of Sathramelin, but he is soon disturbed by a light from somewhere in the chapel that is strong enough to register through his eyelids. Curious and a little worried, Friedrich opens his eyes, and the source of the light is immediately obvious. It is Seraphine, or rather something incredibly bright that is forming in her lap. Asimai, including Seraphine, often glow with a soft light during deep prayer or meditation, and that is nothing new to Friedrich, but he has never seen anything like this. The light intensifies until it becomes blinding and the cleric has to shield his eyes. And the others, everyone but Seraphine that is, reacts to the light as well by getting up and stumbling away from the sorceress.
Father, what is going on?
Shield your eyes, don't look directly at the light. The light continues to grow brighter and brighter until everyone has to turn away to protect their eyes. Then, as suddenly as it began, the light simply vanishes. Everyone is blinking and squinting, trying to see if Seraphine is all right. But all they can see in the gloomy chapel is the big white blur left behind by the light. Seraphine? Yes, father? What's going on? Is there trouble? What's this? Are you all right? I'm fine, but look at this. Friedrich can hear the sorceress get up, but he's still unable to see. Give us a moment. Once his vision returns somewhat, the cleric can see that Seraphine is studying something that's placed on the altar. He walks over to the sorceress. What is that? It's a book. It's the book. Everyone gathers around Seraphine, and as their vision improves, they can see that there is indeed a book they have never seen before lying on the altar. Written with the most perfect penmanship they have ever seen in a language that they do not understand. Those who are from Agremeni know exactly what they are looking at. It's a miracle.
That's the Liber Sanctus.
Yes, the words of the prophets, but this book has not been written by any mortal hand.
Angels. It has to have been written by angels.
Indeed, and I don't think a book like this has existed for over a century. Seraphine, I suppose your prayers for guidance were truly answered. The Asimai simply nods, too absorbed in the writings to say anything. Friedrich can see that the pages are painted with immaculate colors, and that the images seem alive whenever he looks directly at them. For a few minutes, everyone just stands and watches in silence as the sorceress turns the pages. The cleric feels almost entranced looking at the pages, and even though he cannot read the language, he knows the content of every page from the images and the fact that he has read the Liber Sanctus over 100 times in the Agremenian language. And because of that, he also notices when the book should have been over but still goes on, and the images show a female Asimai that looks exactly like Seraphine. At that point, the sorceress quickly closes the book and lifts it up, showing it to the others. It's around 6 inches thick, bound in white leather with a golden clasp and a golden symbol of Sathramelin in the middle of the cover. The craftsmanship, much like the writing, is too perfect for mortal hands. Janosch taps Friedrich's shoulder.
We should go meet Ismark, father.
Yes, you're right. Gottfried, stay here with Seraphine. The rest of us are going to the tavern.
Of course, father.
The paladin gets his glaive and places himself by the entrance of the chapel. Meanwhile, Seraphine wanders off to the corner where they all slept and sits down to study the book. The 3 that are going to meet Ismark collect their gear and weapons and leave the church. The Barovian fighter is sitting in the same corner as the day before, but this time he's not drinking wine. Instead, he's fidgeting with the scroll case Friedrich gave him. The cleric, witch hunter, and paladin all walk over to Ismark, who stands up to greet them. Friedrich looks the fighter in his eyes and asks, "So, Mr. Kolyanovich, what is your answer?" And that is where we are ending the story this time. And I thank you very much for watching or listening, and hopefully I will see you in the next video.